Hello, how are you? I hope you are all doing well. Today I'm going to look at design in terms of your layout and hopefully some guidance about your content structuring. Okay, next week I will go more specifically into the type, the fonts you use, and color schemes. So for this morning, just to begin, in terms of your website, we know that a user's attention is finite. We don't read, we scan, and we know this according to eye tracking software. So again, this is about being very clear about what is on each of your pages, being very clear and succinct about how you write your content, avoiding all extra words or words that do not lend to what your content is about or what your website is about, what your main theme is. It also has implications. We scan in terms of that F-line pattern. So it simply means when we arrive at a website, we look across the top banner, the first two lines. We look down along the left column. If we don't find what we want, we move on. Okay? This also has implication in terms of search engine optimization. So it's always a good idea to use a number of keywords that are representative of your website and certainly your web page on the first few lines. Okay. Web pages must be self-evident. Again, very often we muddle through things. Think of when you buy a new phone or if you buy any new domestic appliance, we rarely read instructions. We just try to problem solve or muddle through. Okay. Be very clear about what is clickable. Okay. So never ever in website design will you underline or use underline. Okay. If you're using icons, use conventions such as metaphors that are extremely useful in design, such as, let's say, a trash can. Well, that denotes you want to bin something. A shopping cart, you want to purchase something. Be very aware that 88% in general of your users will arrive at your website either from search engines or links. So they will not type in the URL. They may not come directly to your index page, your home page. So be very mindful of that. So again, in terms of your content structuring, what I would be suggesting is almost map it out using pen and paper, like a table of contents. So at the very top, you have your theme. So what is your website about? And I know Eamon has given some criteria. Or topics, so you can use whichever suits yourself. And then think about, well, how are you going to break it down? What are going to be the main sections? And then what are the subsections? And it's the very same then. If you use that table of contents like structure, you can apply it almost like a hierarchy to your website. Okay? Staying standard implies better cross-browser compatibility. Okay, so again, you look at what is current. Just think of your favorite websites. What do you like about them? So again, what is intuitive? What is easy to use? What makes you use particular websites, and why do you like them? You use generally that similar structure, but be innovative about your content. Okay. And finally, in terms of design, even though this has more to do with color, the general rule is design it in black and white. Just get in your elements, get in your content, and then begin to use more design things like color around it. So I'm going to begin with looking at 4 basic design principles. And the first one is proximity. So a group of theorists around the 1940s, 50s, Gestalt theorists, came up with a number of laws to do with how we perceive things. One of them is proximity. And it simply states that group related items together. So we perceive connections between visual elements that are closer to each other. And if we look here on screen, we can see automatically we perceive this as 3 columns, not 6 row or columns of dots. And not red or black, okay? So again, proximity overrides other similarities, like if it's shape or color and so. If we take the example here, I just want you to take one moment to look at the card on the left and on the right. And I just want you to observe or note what's good about one or the other. We can see that the card on the left, it's not cluttered. However, the elements are not logically grouped together, so the effect is quite weak. Okay, so again, there is no law of proximity here. We can see automatically again that the card on the right has a much more pleasing visual effect. And again, it comes down to the grouping of the elements, okay? So again, it's more logical. We can see the company name is in a larger heading with the location below it. And we can see then the second set of elements that gives us information on the services provided. So again, in terms of web design, by grouping similar items on the page, it becomes more organized, logical, and intuitive to a reader. Okay. Let's take a look at this one. Now, apologies, it's a little bit stretched. I'm just taking one moment. Okay, so again, we can see running along the top, we automatically scan along the banner, which could be your global navigation. You may have your tagline. That's generally where you find your logo. And we can see here there's four visual elements, four columns in terms of layout and structure. The idea also of proximity, it implies that elements are intellectually connected. And what I mean by that there is a communications relationship between them, and it is also visual. So for example, we can see there's clear categories of women's fashion, men's, prime, and then your own sign in and so, okay? We can see within those columns, there's a graphic within them. And again, the graphic is the same size. The content, how the subheadings there, women's fashion, men's fashion, is laid out, again, it's consistent, it falls into a logical order. If we take a look at the next one. So again, in terms of content structuring, which really is also about proximity, we can see it is divided into personal, business, okay? So they would be the two main groups of users that will be coming to this website. I have selected personal, and we can see underneath that we've got shop, support, my Vodafone. But again, they're in a clear logical order, okay? They're close together. So again, the grouping of related elements into closer proximity, it creates organization. The next one we have here is the Irish Times. Now again, Eamon has spoke about semantics, and we can see here the Irish Times, a very clear heading. We can see the subheadings underneath. So you've got news, sport, business. Now there is color coordinating there, but it's very clear in terms of proximity again that these are the main headings. I have selected and clicked into news, and we can see what is current in underneath that. Again, just to note, even the fonts, the font size is smaller. It's in sentence case now, as opposed to what's previous is in uppercase. So again, and there's different shading around it. So just become aware of, when grouping your elements together and your content, become aware of changes such as size and weight, or the placement of text and graphics. Okay. So to summarize proximity, we can say items in close proximity to each other become one visual unit. Okay, the basic premise of proximity is to organize. So it's about organizing your information as well. It's more likely to be read and to be remembered. Elements that we can see that were related logically are also related visually. Okay, so again, that's a consistency there of the type of how we place our graphics as well. I briefly spoke about this one. So in essence, proximity encourages us to create a clear visual hierarchy. Okay. So more important headings, again, are tagged within your H1 elements. And then you have your sub-themes underneath. And again, the other thing is to avoid too many separate elements on your web page. Don't be afraid of white space as well. The general rule is 1/3 white space to 2/3 copy. And what I mean by that is text and graphics. But again, context, depending on what your subject area is, will also have implications for your design. The second one, the second principle is alignment. So again, quite similar to proximity, but it refers to placing text and elements on your page so that they line up to create order, which in turn improves the readability of your design. If we look at some of those designs in terms of it was the Amazon site, there was 4 columns in it. So this is about your physical structure, how you are going to lay out your actual website. Alignment, it is largely invisible, but yet if things are placed in a haphazard way, well then it becomes incoherent. Okay, so this is about focusing you to be conscious of what it is you are placing again and how you place elements. Let's go back to this one again. So our graphics here. So we saw in the left one, the elements do not have any connection. Whereas I've just put in a little red line on the right one. So at least we can say that the elements here, they're flush right, okay, or right aligned. So we've got a number of different types of alignment. It can be left and right margins. Again, the most common one is inevitably left because that's how we read, left to right. You can align elements with your top and bottom margins. Center, I would not be advising. That might be useful as a cover page in a report or in a thesis, but center alignment is not good really. It doesn't really work. There's also this notion of edge, so you might skew your margins, your top and your left or bottom and right, whatever. But at least it still means that you have some sort of consistency within each of your pages, within your website. Visual optical. Just if we take a look here at the graphic. So because of the type of text that is used on the left-hand side, it is very rounded, very floaty. So if I want to keep my proper left margin there, my heading, which is visual there, it looks as if it's almost centered. It does not look right. Whereas even though it is outside the grid-like structure or the margin on the right-hand one, it actually looks better. So again, just to be mindful that in general, whatever looks best, you may need to sort of, depending on your font, you may need to remove the grid or move away from the grid-like structure. Okay, we have another example here. So I'm just going to give you a moment and I want you to think about what's good or not so good with the one on the left as opposed to the right, or vice versa. Okay, so with the left, we can see the heading is aligned over not the bulleted list, but the content of the bulleted list. Because the image it looks as though it is simply thrown in at the edge on the right hand side, and it creates all that sort of space in between the bulleted list. If we look at the one on the right, you can see clearly the heading is aligned with the image. The graphic is aligned directly with the whole 6 bulleted points. So it's much neater, it's much clearer. So in terms of alignment, what I would be suggesting is centered alignment can be very safe. However, it doesn't really work, and definitely not for websites. Left alignment is most common because, again, that is how we read. Visual alignment is more important than precise alignment. So if something looks off, don't be afraid to abandon the grid. And when placing items on a page, ensure each item has some visual alignment with another item on the page, okay? So very often what we say in terms of alignment is almost to squint or skew your eyes and just see if something looks really out of sync with other elements on your page. Other things to be aware of: you never center headings over flush left. So if your main body text is left aligned, don't center headings. It does not work well. Generally, you will use the same layout. So again, if it's a 3-column, a 2-column, whatever your layout is, apart from maybe your home page, landing page, you're going to be consistent. Whatever it is, use it consistently throughout your website. Our eyes, again, like to see order, plus it helps communicate the information. So when you place items on a page, make sure that each one has some visual alignment with other items. So like I was saying, if lines of text are across from each other horizontally, align the baseline. Just look at, again, the edges of your images, of your text. Are they aligned? Okay. Another example. So I'll just give you a moment. And then we'll just wonder if you'd make any adjustments to this page. Okay. Well, again, we can see our global navigation. And in this image, there is a clear, strong line running along the baseline of the navigation bar, which is good. We can see there are 3 clear or separate blocks of text, and their left and right margins are aligned. Okay. If we look at the 3 labels, the buttons are not aligned. So Get to Tips is out of sync with the Learn More icons or buttons, which doesn't work. In terms of the headings, for the first one, making substitutions, it uses sentence case, and after that it does not. And then, let's say within the images, while the blocks are the same size, it's a pity about the images, the text images within them. They're different sizes again. So the lavender one is just much larger and it just looks skewed. So again, it just doesn't really work that well. So the next one I'm going to look at, the third principle, is consistency. So again, like what I've been saying in terms of the last 2 anyway, keep a consistent style throughout your website in terms of your typeface, your font family, color, the space, the padding that you use around, any attributes. Even if there is variety to your layout or your structure, repeat some elements or aspects of your design throughout the entire website. This gives a sense of repetition, gives us a sense of professionalism as users and trust. We begin to trust what this website is saying, okay? Okay, so again, consistency, it brings unity and cohesiveness to your design. And yes, as I was saying, it provides a sense of professionalism amongst your users. The fourth point principle I'm looking at, and I'm going to begin here with examples, is contrast. So while I am saying be consistent throughout your website, I'm now saying, well, we're going to introduce a little bit of contrast. Let's take a look at these two. It's the very same article. What we have created here is a sense of contrast, okay? So the notion of contrast, it makes it more interesting. If we look at the one on the right hand side, it stands out. It's a clearer design. Everything is still consistent. So your elements like your heading 1, your heading 2, your body text, the spacing, it's pretty much consistent. It is very much consistent, but what it means is we've created greater contrast. So this is when you go into your CSS, you use one typeface. So you don't change your types of font, but you stylize your typeface a little bit differently for your headings and subheadings, and it just creates a greater contrast. If we look at the second example here, so again, everything is the same within both CVs here. I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but we've just created again greater contrast. So between different subheadings, for example, the one on the right, between maybe your personal details, your educational details, we've created greater space. And therefore, again, using the law of proximity, it denotes what is similar, it denotes the subsections much clearer. So in terms of contrast, what I'm really saying is it adds visual interest to your website. It refers to a noticeable difference between your design elements, but it is not using a variety of styles. So you're adhering to one typeface, but you're modifying through your CSS. You're modifying maybe the weight, the size, different elements such as that. Contrast is the easiest way of adding interest to your website, but again, you're keeping everything consistent. So to summarize, okay, personally, using the 4 design principles in a methodical manner, one at a time, that's what I would recommend, okay? So find structure to your content and group content and design elements into logical proximity. So what I'm saying is maybe look at a 2-column, 3-column grid-like structure. Decide what it is your structure is. Use the table of contents to map out your actual content. So what content you are placing within each of your web pages, and stick to it, okay? Use space to set items apart or to connect them, okay? So again, be mindful of how you use padding, okay? Adhering to the law of proximity. Use an alignment. Again, decide if things are going to be left, right, whatever it is, but stick to it. And then find or create repetitive features and keep your layout, structure and style consistent. So maybe in repetitive features like your heading 1s, your heading 2s, your paragraphs, the size of your images that you use. Your repetitive features are also seen in terms of your footer, your banner, global navigation, a tagline, if you're using a logo, whatever it is, but at least there's a consistent style throughout your website. And finally, have fun with contrast, but be a little bit careful of it. Okay? Thank you.